The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors. Warning! This program contains strong adult language, violence, and brief nudity. It's everything you're looking for.
Welcome to Whispers, everyone, on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog. It is 8:07 p.m., 72 degrees here in downtown Wheeling. Give us a call, 304-214-1600. Give us a call toll-free, 866-514-1600. Remember that Whispers is brought to you by the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum in Bel Air, Ohio, and A Journey Within in Philadelphia, West Virginia.
Hello, everybody.
Good job going through all that.
Yes, absolutely.
All in one breath, too.
I know, I was about to lose my breath.
You were getting a little red there.
Well, that's Jordan, that's Nick,
hey,
and I'm Lola.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that part.
Well, you
At
were
least we're on the air.
So.
You did good. You did good. So, real quick for everybody, because I know people were, saying prayers for your dad last week. Can you give us an update?
He is actually getting a defibrillator put in right now as we speak. So if you are the praying sort, get on your knees and start praying.
Yeah.
They're having a little bit of difficulty with one of the leads, just trying to get it in there. I guess he's got a lot of scar tissue going on.
Yeah.
And so they just have to push it through and get it connected and that kind of stuff.
Oh.
Anything could happen, so we're still praying that everything gets through all right. Shouldn't be a problem.
Well, he came through the surgery so well, really.
Yeah, everything went really well through the surgery.
I'm sure everything's going to be fine. I just know this.
How long is the defibrillator surgery supposed to take?
I'm not a doctor.
I didn't know if they told you
until they're done. I'm not going to rush the guy. Listen, buddy, sure. I've been waiting for 30 minutes now. I want it free.
Yeah. Doesn't this come with a guarantee?
Yeah. I can actually hear now.
Good job, Nick. Yeah, you put on the wrong headphones again.
No. Yeah, right. I was getting half of everything, so it was really astounding. I didn't know what was happening.
Do you have the stereo or the mono button pushed on
I have no idea how to work these things.
Most people just put them on their heads.
I did, and I was hearing
both ears, Nick. Both ears.
Yeah, that's what happened, and it works now, so I can hear it. This is a great sounding show again. So
I'm going to tell you too. We've had a lot of compliments on the new website.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It took a long time to build, so I'm very happy to hear that.
I think it looks tremendous.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. It really is.
And me yelling at him every 5 minutes. Move it there. Move it there.
I'm like, dude, just calm down,
If I'm rearranging a room, I don't think I'd want you there to supervise.
You would not want him there because he's going to mess everything up. Now, I've also added couple of new things to the website. I've added a forum to it, and we now have a voicemail box. So if you're out there and you don't want to call in because you're scared to listen to Jordan and I, especially Jordan, and you just want to call, give us your story, and get off the air, line as quick as possible. We have a voicemail box. You can do that at. It's 1-973-215-9178, and all that is pretty much just a box somewhere.
It's like an answering machine.
I have no idea where it's even at. Seriously, I have no idea. The last one I had that was like this was in Seattle, and I started getting calls from people from the correctional facility. And
close enough.
They're like, Bill something or other wants to talk to you from the Brook Hills Correctional Facility. And I was like, I feel bad for this guy because I'm not returning his call. I'm not talking to Bill.
End of this month, the last Wednesday of this month, we're having a big competition. It's open lines for everybody out there. We got Tammy Gross is going to come back in and join us in here. We got a couple other people. I think
hopefully
Mrs. Blackmore.
I'm hoping to get Mrs. Blackmore
come
here.
in.
I'm hoping to get Tammy. Tammy said she's doing her best, and most likely she's going to come, but she's doing her best. She wants to get off work, work that night. So,
okay, I'll be a guest just so I don't have to go to work.
Why not? But the way we got it set up, is you're going to call in and you're going to tell us your scariest story, your ghost stories, your creepy stories, anything good, and we got a lot of prizes to give away.
Sure do. I was just looking over the list.
A Journey Within's giving us 3 20-minute chair massages.
Jordan keeps trying to steal those.
They're in my car.
Like, I won the contest 3 times.
Da Vinci's Pizza up in Oglebay is giving us like 16-inch pizzas.
Yes, 1 topping, 16-inch pizza. And these things are awesome. Jordan brings them over to my house all the time while we're doing work or something, and we pretty much it's just good.
We got movie tickets, and I think even a photography package. Yeah, so
wow.
We're going tomorrow to talk to the guy about
he's already
exactly
offered it. We
getting.
haven't picked it up yet, so we don't know what the package is entailing, but you can get your picture taken. What you can do with it after that, whatever.
You can look at it all you want.
This is so free for all today, isn't it?
Yes. Another one. Triadelphia Volunteer Fire Department wants to remind you that October is Fire Prevention Month. Remember to meet with your families to make sure. Okay, remember to meet with your families and make an energy.
Oh my goodness!
Jesus,
can you read,
Jordan? I can't even read my own
emergency exit plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
She knows what I wrote, and she didn't even see it.
We don't want Jordan having to come look for you. We want everybody to be outside when he gets there.
All right.
Yes.
Make sure that your meeting place is a safe distance away from your house.
Right.
Also, remember when you change your clock, change your batteries. This means all of your smoke alarm batteries need to be changed when you change your clocks back to standard time in the fall.
And that is the first weekend in November, isn't it?
Yes,
it is, right after our birthdays.
So, that's right.
Now is
you
the
don't
time
lose
we
an
start
hour
dropping,
on your birthday. That's good.
Yes. Yeah. Now is the time to start dropping hints. Birthdays are coming. Birthdays are coming.
If anybody wants to pay my rent, that would be great.
I know.
How's that for a gift drop?
Okay.
All right.
Well, you want to go ahead and bring on the guest?
Yes.
Right. We got her on the phone.
I'm excited about this.
All right. Kathleen Marden was 13 years old when her Aunt Betty Hill called home to recount seeing a flying saucer in New Hampshire's White Mountains. She was a witness to the evidence that happened that night in September of 1961 and the aftermath. With her intimate knowledge of the Hills and with Betty's collection of files of the incident, she co-wrote Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience with nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman. We welcome Kathleen to the show. If she's on. We lost.
She's been abducted.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
There she is.
Hey,
Hello.
Kathleen, how you doing today?
I'm fine.
Now, Kathy, you were Betty Hill's niece. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And before we even get started, what kind of people were Betty and Barney Hill? It's hard to look at pictures and stuff, and you hear the story, and forget. It's easy to forget that there was actually people behind this.
Yes. Well, let me tell you about them. I'll start with Betty. She was the oldest of 5 children, grew up on a farm in New Hampshire. She was a very smart girl, intelligent. She soared ahead of the rest of her classmates, and after graduation from high school, she went on to college. She completed 2 years, but then got married and raised her husband's 3 children. And then when she was divorced in 1954, I believe it was, she went back to college and finished work. She had a great sense of humor. She was very committed to what she was doing. She was an advocate of civil rights and human rights, and she worked as a social worker for the state of New Hampshire. Now, she met Barney when he and his wife and children were visiting Portsmouth and Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, which was a tourist area. It was very popular with people on the East Coast, and they had driven up from Philadelphia. They had friends who lived in Portsmouth, and they happened to be staying at the same boarding house that Betty was staying in while her house was being moved and remodeled. So she met them and continued to stay in contact with Barney and his family. Now, sometime later, when Barney got divorced, he stayed in contact with Betty, and they re-met, and started to see each other. They never intended to get married. They thought that they would just remain friends because they had mutual interests. Barney had a great sense of humor, and he, too, was committed to civil rights and human rights. He was involved with the NAACP, and after he and Betty were married, he served in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, on the local board as legal redress, and also on the regional board. In 1964, I believe it was, he was appointed by the governor of New Hampshire to serve as on the advisory committee for the U.S. Civil Rights Commission and the Office of Economic Opportunity. He was a leader in the state as well as Betty. He was the first executive director of the Rockingham County Community Action Program. He and Betty were both involved in forming that organization. He worked on an education, on a literacy program in the state. He campaigned for Lyndon Johnson, and the three of us went to Johnson's inauguration together. And Betty also campaigned. I did as well. And they were quite outstanding members of the community. They certainly would not have wanted anyone to know that they had witnessed a UFO. Certainly not having been abducted by one.
And they don't seem like people that would just make this up. It seemed like that would hurt them to some degree.
No, they thought that they would lose their jobs. The story was to remain confidential. And, they were intelligent people. Barney's IQ was 140, and I'd say Betty's was probably that high or pretty close to it. So they were intelligent. They were not naive. They knew, if this story became public, they could suffer considerably from it.
Now, how long after they were married did this happen to them?
Well, they were married in May of 1960, and this happened to them in September of 1961.
So it was just about a year after their marriage.
Yes,
now,
a little over a year.
For people out there who have no clue what the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, I didn't know what it was at first. Can you tell us what happened? What happened in 1961? What happened that night? What were they doing? September 19th. What was going on?
Okay. Betty and Barney had just taken a short trip from New Hampshire to Niagara Falls. Then they swung up through Montreal, and they were returning home to their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, at night. Barney worked nights. He was on the graveyard shift at the post office, so he was accustomed to staying awake at night anyway. He'd had plenty of rest the night before and thought that he could just drive home. So they drove on through the north woods of New Hampshire and were about to enter the White Mountain Range when Betty looked up and saw what appeared to be a new star in the sky. Well, in the report to Walter Webb, who was the NICAP investigator, National Investigations Committee for Aerial Phenomena, Walter Webb wrote the original report. It was a confidential report, and he had interviewed them shortly after their sighting. But let me get back to the sighting. Betty saw the UFO, and in the report, she stated that it appeared to be a falling star, only it fell upward in the sky. She thought that maybe it was a satellite. She'd never seen a satellite before. Maybe it was some other conventional aerial phenomenon. But it started to grow larger in the sky and come closer, and it sparked a curiosity. She finally convinced Barney to stop so she could get a look at it through the binoculars just north of an area called Franconia Notch, which is a popular tourist section of the state. So he stopped, and they both looked at it. She saw that it was about a third the size of the moon at that point and was flashing multicolored points of light as it crossed the face of the moon. Barney looked at it, and it had passed the moon at that point and was headed in a northwest direction toward northeastern Vermont. It suddenly turned without turning like a conventional aircraft. It sort of just bounced back very rapidly in his direction. And he found this to be a little bit alarming. It reminded him of a huge aircraft coming in for a landing that he had observed in airports before, only it was completely silent, and he didn't see any conventional lighting, although it came close enough, he said, that he thought he could see the windows in it. He ran to the car, got in, and started to head south through Franconia Notch. It followed along beside their vehicle, and as they approached an area called the Old Man of the Mountain, which actually was a granite profile of an old man that fell off the mountain in 2003. But it was, in 1961, about 43 feet high from forehead to chin. And Betty and Barney noticed that the craft was nearly twice as long as the old man's face, his profile. So it was about 80 feet long. It was appeared to be spinning or rotating. It was standing up straight, sort of like you'd place a cigar on a table and stand it up straight.
Now, was it cigar-shaped itself, or was it more like the typical saucer shape? At
that time, it appeared to be cigar-shaped, but that is what a typical saucer looks like when it's on its side.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
So it was up and down. Is
Pardon
that what
me?
you're saying? Was it up and down?
Yes, it was up and down. It was vertical at that time. But as they watched it, it moved in a stair-step pattern from vertical to horizontal, back to vertical, back to horizontal. Most curious. So they got back into the car, and they're driving south, and it started to behave in other strange ways. It was bobbing along the top of the mountain, but then it would spring forward very rapidly and spring backward. Barney said at its closest approach, he thought it was about 1,000 feet away at that point. And at this point, it was horizontal. As they exited the Franconia Notch area, they entered an area called Indian Head. And this is an area where there were cabins and some tourist attractions. And Barney was feeling very relieved that they were back in civilization, although it was the off-season and there weren't many people around at that time. There were no other cars on the road. He was looking for a police officer because he wanted to report what he saw. He was still trying to convince himself that it was a military aircraft, even though it was obviously unconventional. But he was a skeptic and wasn't willing to believe what his eyes were seeing. Betty was becoming excited by what she was observing as Barney was driving, and convinced him to stop again to take a look at it. So as he was looking for a place to stop, the craft suddenly shifted ahead of them and hovered right over the highway. And this was U.S. Highway Route 3, the major north-south route in New Hampshire at that time in that area. So Barney actually had to stop his car right in the middle of the highway, straddling the center line. He, at that point, picked up his binoculars, and he had a gun on the floor. He had taken a gun out earlier because he was afraid bears might come out of the woods in this remote area. And he wanted to be able to protect himself. He was a city boy, and he thought he might be attacked by a bear. So anyway, he had the gun in his pocket, and as he got out of the car to take a look at the craft, it had descended to within about 100 feet of his vehicle. He looked at it, and Betty looked at it. They saw that it was shaped like a big pancake, but it had a double row of windows with struts of structures dividing the different panes in these windows. And there was an intense blue-white light behind the windows. The craft shifted at that point over an adjacent field, and Betty remained in the car with the interior light on. He walked into the field with the binoculars observing this craft. What he saw was figures behind the windows. There were about 9 to 11 of them, and they were looking down at him as he was looking up at them. The craft tipped toward him, and red lights started to come out of each end of it that seemed to be on small, fin-like structures, and something appeared to drop out of the bottom of the craft. All of the figures except for one at that point had moved to what appeared to be a panel on the back wall of this corridor, while one, who had what Barney thought was a very evil-looking face, remained at the window looking down at him. And this was all part of his conscious memory. I want to tell you, this was in Walter Webb's confidential report written in October of 1961, about a month after the sighting.
So this was before he started the hypnotherapy?
Yeah.
Right, so he definitely remembered there was an evil-looking face.
Yeah.
You know, looking back. I want to interrupt you just a second. I just had contact with my stepmother, and my dad just got out of surgery and is doing really good.
That's great.
You just scared me. Wow. Okay. I told you, didn't I, that everything would be okay.
So thank you, everybody out there that was praying for my dad.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Kathleen.
Sorry, Kathleen.
But he's doing great.
Yes.
Well, in Walter Webb's confidential report, he wrote that Barney said that the one at the window had an evil face. It reminded him of a Nazi. It was very frightening to him. And Barney had served in the Army during World War II. And so he was a veteran. And he was very concerned about the precision of movement of these figures in the craft. He felt that they were ready to carry out a plan, and he felt that that plan was to catch him, he told Walter Webb, like a bug in a net. And this was very frightening to him. He wanted to take self-initiated action, pull the binoculars down, pull the gun out. He wanted to protect himself from this craft, but he wasn't able to move. He seemed to be paralyzed at that point. And this figure, and this came out under hypnosis, this figure was giving him a telepathic message to stay there and just keep looking. Oh, Barney only knew consciously that he was able to pull the binoculars down from his eyes eventually and run back to the car. As he did this, the craft again shifted over the top of the car, and as he sped down the highway, he and Betty heard a series of beeping or buzzing sounds on the trunk of the car. They were loud, they were code-like, and in the Walter Webb's report, they described them as feeling like a tuning fork feels if you drop it on the ground. It passed a vibration through their bodies and through the vehicle. He also reported that to Pease Air Force Base the day after he arrived home. And also a very clear description of the craft that he saw. So it's quite evident that all of this was part of his conscious memory and Betty's conscious memory. However, their memories started to fade after they heard these beeping or buzzing sounds. Betty's memory remained much longer than Barney's. His was nearly wiped out at that point of the buzzing sounds. But Betty recalled passing an area called the Jack-o'-lantern Resort, which is 8 miles south of the field. And she also remembered a sharp turn off the highway. The next conscious memory that she and Barney both had was of seeing a huge fiery orb in the road highlighted against the trees. They also remembered a second series of these beeping or buzzing sounds about 30 to 35 miles down the road from the field. And Betty turned to Barney and said, "Well, now do you believe in flying saucers?" And Barney replied, "Don't be ridiculous. There's no such thing as flying saucers." And they continued on home.
Oh, wow. Kathleen, we need to take a break real quick.
Okay.
And just hang on the line, and we'll be right back with you.
Okay.
Everybody, you're listening to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog. We'll be right back.
Open sea, sparkle blue beauty like a...
Over recent years, the traditional office has become more of a touchpad than a daily destination. Long gone is the reliance on a landline to work away from the office. More people are performing work from home or other locations thanks to technologies like GoToMyPC that let you take your office wherever you go. With GoToMyPC, you have freedom from the office, enhanced work-life balance, and increased work flexibility. When choosing a remote access service, you need to make sure it's easy to set up, easy to use, and affordable. That's why you need GoToMyPC. And you can try it free for 30 days. For this special offer, go to mypc.com/techpodcasts. That's go to mypc.com/techpodcasts. Take your office with you wherever you go with GoToMyPC. Who's sure of herself and stands out in a crowd? Who knows what's important in life and makes that her first priority? Who knows that her community's greatest resource is the health of its people? Her name is Andrea DeShong from A Journey Within.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I believe in these stressful times we need an hour to be quiet, go within, make friends with our breath. Let our minds receive what our soul already knows. The healing journey is within. This is why I'm extending this offer to you, that when you invest in a package of 10 one-hour massages, my gift to you is 2 free.
What the world takes out of you, let Andrea put back in. A Journey Within. 304-547-4003.
Attention kids of all ages from 1 to 101. Want to see Darth Vader and R2-D2? What about Spider-Man? Or how about a pirate that's traveled the 7 seas, or a NASA-trained and certified astronaut? Kobe Bryant and Dirk Nowitzki are there too. And where can you see all this and more? At the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum on Noble Street in the all-American town of Blair, Ohio. Dan Brown and the folks at the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum are now listed in the Guinness Book of World Records. Last year for the largest Lego image ever, and this year for the world's largest castle made entirely of Lego building blocks. Located at 4597 Noble Street in Blair, Ohio, in the old Gravel Hill School, the museum is open Wednesday through Sunday from 12 to 5 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And there's entertainment daily. A band made entirely of Lego blocks, the Lego 3, perform for everyone. School groups and kids clubs want to take a road trip? Give them a call at 740-671-8890 for group rates. So, for 36,000 square feet of Lego fun, head over to the all-American town of Blair, Ohio, and visit the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum at 4597 Noble Street. Oh, and while you're there, don't forget the new space room's open now, too.
Copyrighted images created under license by Lego Group.
Blue beauty like a young man's dream.
Welcome back to Whispers, everybody, on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog. It is 8:37 p.m. here in downtown Wheeling. Give us a call. You got a question for our guest, Kathleen Marden. It is 304-214-1600 and toll free 866-514-1600. We have a score to give out.
My class where I teach creative read, writing, and debate. The debate class is wanting to know who won the debate. And so Team A got 303 points. Team B, 305. So Team B won. So congratulations, Kathleen, Matthew, Garrick, and Jesse. Make sure I get those names right. If I put somebody on the wrong team, I'm in trouble.
Congratulations,
guys. Now, Kathy, I have a question from a gentleman in England. He wanted me to ask you, and I'm just going to read his comment, okay?
Okay.
Okay, it says, I have heard Stephen Greer make in some of his interviews regarding seeing documents about stagecraft used by humans, complete with crews that are replicated to look like aliens, to carry out abductions, to spread fear to the public on the subject of UFOs. I would like to hear her thoughts on this, as she has extensive knowledge on this subject after studying the first and also the most important cases of alien abduction ever. Have you ever heard of anything like this? Now, I know you were with MUFON, correct?
Yeah, I have heard of, it's sort of a conspiracy theory kind of statement, and no, it's totally in my gray basket. I have absolutely no idea. I can say that in 1961, we simply did not have the technology to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do some of the stuff that craft was, that they consciously remembered doing. So, but you want me to ask, so I thought I would ask. So that was UFOs Among Us. We also have a phone call.
Yes, this is Bill, and he's got a question for you.
Hi, Bill.
Go ahead,
Kathleen?
Bill.
Yeah, Kathleen, you said, was it Barry or Barney who's seen a sinister character in the craft? Is that right?
Barney saw what?
You said he's seen a Nazi-looking character, or
yes,
or
he did not look like a Nazi.
Oh.
It was his facial expression, and it was the precision of movement of the beings on board the craft that reminded him of Nazi military officers, not their appearance itself.
Okay. It could have been Bigfoot.
You never know. But, I mean, so pretty much these guys were going through, they were a precision team, drilled, and they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yes.
I was kind of swaying the way Bill was, where, was he thinking he was seeing like a Nazi takeover of some kind?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. It was the precision of movement.
Okay.
Hey, Bill, thanks for calling.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone. Well, thank you anyway, Bill.
So now, where we were at was that, they're looking at these crafts. He's got the binoculars up to his, looking through the windows. And now they're seeing, how many people did he think he saw in the windows themselves?
He thought 9 to 11.
9 to 11.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how soon after this were they abducted, and exactly how did that happen? Did the craft land in front of them on the road, or?
No, well, in 1964, they underwent hypnosis with renowned psychiatrist Dr. Benjamin Simon. He had no interest in UFOs and no knowledge about UFOs, but he was known for working with shell shock victims from World War II and who had traumatic amnesia. And he had a great deal of success with them. In fact, he set up the psychiatric unit at the Mason General Hospital on Long Island, New York, and was the chief the chief of neuropsychiatry there. So they were referred to him, and under hypnosis, they both told the same story. And that was that when Betty recalled that turn that they made off from Route 3, mentioned that earlier, that they made a left-hand turn, and then that was onto a secondary road, and they made another turn onto a very remote dirt road, and waiting in that road were about 6 of these figures. They at first didn't realize that they were the figures that Barney saw on board the craft. They thought that they had encountered an accident, perhaps, and they were kind of confused by it. But as the beings started to approach the car and divided into 2 groups, Betty and Barney started to panic. He thought about going for his gun. He realized that it was the beings on board the craft, but he was afraid to do that because he thought he might be harmed. Betty was terrified. She was going to try to escape. She put her hand on the door, the lever, in order to try to open the door, to run into the woods and hide. But at that point, 3 came to her door, took her out of the vehicle, and took Barney out of the vehicle. They both lost consciousness at that point. Betty, however, did wake up as they were being taken down a path through the woods. And all of this was revealed under hypnosis. They were hypnotized separately for a period of 6 months, and Dr. Simon imposed amnesia at the end of each session so that not only could they not remember what they had said, but they couldn't communicate with each other about any of these memories. They didn't have the memories at that point. And I go into great detail about this in my book, Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience.
And it's an extremely good book, very well written, so you should be proud of yourself. Now, we have another phone call, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
Garrett's on the phone.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Garrett. You're on the phone with Kathleen.
How you doing, Nick and Jordan?
Hey, Garrett.
buddy.
Glad to hear about your dad there, Jordan.
Me too.
I was wanting to know that if Barney Num ever had any lost time during their abduction, from the time that they feel that they got abducted until the time that they felt like they came back.
Yes. They did experience lost time. When they arrived home on that night, they realized that it was daylight, actually. Dawn was just streaking the sky. Betty walked the dog, and she said she could hear the birds chirping. Barney went in and checked the clock. Their watches, they attempted to check their watches, but their watches had somehow broken during the night, and they never worked again. But they did realize they arrived home later than they had anticipated, even allowing for the stops that they had taken and for the period of slow driving along the route while they were looking at this craft. And 2 months later, during another confidential interview, where they pieced all of this together, they realized that it was actually 2 hours of missing time.
Oh, wow.
Now, their watch wasn't the only thing that was messed up. Betty's dress was torn. Is that correct?
Yes, this was a brand new dress. She'd only worn it once. And when she put it on that morning, it was in very fine shape. And during that day, all she basically did was ride in the car and do a little sightseeing. But when she arrived home, there was a 2-inch tear in the stitching along the top right side of the zipper, and there was a 1-inch tear in the thick zipper fabric on the left side, as well as torn stitching. So her hem was also torn out on the lower right side, and on that same side, the lining was torn from waist to hemline. No explanation for how this could possibly have happened.
Okay, and this wasn't any part of her conscious memory. This was part that was totally this was in the 2 hours.
Oh, she didn't. Yes, she did not know how the damage was done to her dress, but she did know that the damage was done. So she folded it and put it in her closet, planning to repair it.
Okay, well, thank you for your call, Garrick.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks, buddy.
Now, I was watching UFO Hunters the other day, and you were actually on it, so
yeah.
Did a very good job on there. And they had the dress, a picture of the dress, and it had this residue. My TV, it looked like it was a reddish type of residue, like on the arms to some degree, and they had tested that. What was the results of that testing?
Well, Phyllis Budinger, who is an analytical chemist, worked for BP Amoco for 35 years, world-class chemist, did the analysis on the dress. There have been several done, actually, but hers is the most recent. And she did it over a period of 2 years, And her findings were pretty interesting. She found that the stained areas, which were actually stained by a pink powdery substance that grew on the dress, but the stained areas were coated with some kind of biological material that was mostly protein with a small amount of natural oil. And that did not belong to Betty. It didn't come from Betty's body. That protein had attacked the fiber structure of the dress and broken down the dress fiber, causing irreparable damage to the dress.
Now, where does she think she could have picked this up from? I guess, on planet Earth, is there...
Well, she speculated about that. Betty stated that there was a foul odor similar to a very strong smell of marigolds on the craft. She speculated that it might have been from the captor's respiratory emissions, but she also speculated that the areas of staining, the areas where that pink powder grew, were the areas where Betty reported that her abductors had actually seized her and touched the dress.
So it was something on her hands. Now, Kathleen, we're kind of running out of time. What did they made it to the craft, right? Like, what happened when they were inside the UFO, the actual abduction? Can you tell us what happened to that?
They were taken into separate rooms, given physical examinations separately. Betty's was first. They seemed to be very interested in their skeletal structure. In my book, Captured, I go into great detail about those examinations as well as the dress analysis. But they seemed to be interested in our skeletal structure, which was different from theirs, in our skin, which was different from theirs. We had hair, they didn't. They seemed to be interested in the hair. And they scraped Betty's and Barney's skin. They, they pushed along their spine. They looked into their eyes. They took specimens from the openings in their bodies, and they did something that was very, very painful for Betty. They inserted a long 4 to 6 inch needle that was connected to a tube into her abdomen. She called it the needle in her navel. And this was before amniocentesis and before laparoscopy. So this was something that she reported happened under hypnosis.
Now, was there a scar?
But we did not know it at the time. She didn't notice the scar. She didn't look when she arrived home. But something that I learned maybe about a year ago was that we have a new laparoscopic procedure where instead of making an incision through the abdominal wall, we are now introducing the laparoscope through the navel because it's less intrusive and it doesn't leave a scar.
Wow.
Well, Kathleen, because I've always considered their story to really be credible because of the hypnosis and the separate, keeping them entirely separate during the sessions. But has the scientific community at least given them some credibility, even if they kind of fly in the face of what scientists would say isn't possible?
Within the UFO community, those scientists who study UFOs and UFO abductions do give the Hill case credibility, and they have since the beginning. In the book, I have many letters and reports from scientists, and so you'll see the kind of credibility that they were given, even by a scientist who was studying the physical appearance of the aliens who did the abducting.
Why did they decide to try hypnosis? Because it did take a while before from the time of the incident until they got into hypnotherapy. What were the reasons that, aside from just, I wonder what happened in that 2 hours, were there any other physical signs that, that something had happened to them?
Well, Barney started to experience a lot of anxiety about what had happened to him. He developed bleeding ulcers. He was having headaches. He was having sleepless days because he was working at night. And it was causing a lot of problems, physiological problems, and emotional problems that couldn't be resolved with medication.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was seeing a psychiatrist in New Hampshire, thinking that perhaps it was his separation from his children, perhaps it was the commute to work, all of these other things that might have been causing the problem. But one day he spoke to the psychiatrist about how he and Betty had been up to the White Mountains that weekend and started to talk about their close encounter with the UFO. And as it turned out, he talked about that period of missing time that they had and what appeared to be amnesia. And this psychiatrist decided to refer them to Dr. Benjamin Simon in Boston.
Wow.
And that's what got the whole ball rolling then on the story actually coming out.
Yes.
Now, I have the thing that always interested me the most in this was the star map that Betty had drawn, and then Marjorie Fisher had
yes,
Fish. Okay,
from Ohio.
She had mapped out, and I always thought that was one of the most intriguing and probably the thing that added the most credibility to me, to myself.
Yeah, a lot of people think that.
I mean, can you give just a brief description of that?
Yes, of the conversation Betty had, or of the map itself?
Just the map itself and why it's significant.
Okay. Well, it was, Betty asked the leader, she said, I don't know where you're from. I know you're not from around here. And so he produced some type of a three-dimensional kind of hologram type of map from the wall. It was about 2 feet by 3 feet. And there were 16 dots on it, ranging in size from a pinpoint to dots as large as a nickel. And they were connected by solid, heavy lines, dashed lines, and dotted lines. And they represented trade routes. Let's see. So what Marjorie did, after she read the John Fuller's original book in 1966, The Interrupted Journey, thought that if this was more than just a fantasy, she would be able to find where this spacecraft came from. So Betty had drawn a map as a result of a post-hypnotic suggestion, if and only if she could remember it accurately. So Marjorie met with Betty in 1969, and she subsequently built 26 three-dimensional models based upon Betty's map, or attempting to find the stars on Betty's map. She took 4 years to actually find a match. She had started earlier than 1969, and her work was completed in 1972. But what she found and what she did is that she looked for sun-like stars. Now, only about 5% of the 1,000 stars in our neighborhood, 54 light years out, are sun-like stars. And what she found is that all of the stars in this pattern that she eventually found that matched Betty's map were sun-like stars. So this was seen to be more than a coincidence. Some say that it's a 1 in 10,000 chance if they're conservative. Some say it's a 1 in a million chance that Betty could have drawn this just, by chance, and that Marjorie could have identified that pattern.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. I'm going to go ahead and give the address out. You said our listeners could get a autographed copy of the book. It's written by yourself and Stanton Friedman. He was on our show back in August. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and give your address, and I also have it on our website, whispersradio.com, so they can mail you that way. Great. And that address is Kathleen Marden, P.O. Box 93, East Kingston, New Hampshire, 03827, and that's $18.99. You got it autographed by both you and Stan, and that includes the shipping. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, and just mail a check to her, and she'll have it on your way.
If you address again, we got it right on the front page on whispersradio.com.
Okay, well, it's been great having you with us, and we'd love to have you back.
Love to come back.
And so, thank you very much. And
thank you very much, Kathleen.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
It's been ours.
Take care.
You too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I wish she has such a story, and we can't fit it all in.
Don't start on me. we really should have her back on.
Yeah, it's
because
a
she
long,
didn't get
long
into
story,
any of the other.
There's still so many questions, you know.
I know, and I was really impressed that initially and immediately she started with Betty and Barney's credentials.
Yeah,
because so many people. I think Todd and I were talking about it, or maybe it was me and Steve, but, these people there, you can tell who's in it for the money, and, some of the people that come up with these stories, you just think, oh, yeah, right out of the bottom of a brown bottle,
The Bigfoot people.
Yeah, and...
Why are you picking on the Bigfoot people?
Well...
Okay, I know why.
But they really... Theirs was an entirely different circumstance. With their... And one good thing about it is the government was still interested and really took the information and treated it seriously back when that happened to them, as opposed to like 10 years later when it was like, anybody that would call in a UFO sighting or an abduction, they treated you like you were out of your mind,
Yeah.
So they do have, some.
And you don't get the feeling that she's, that they were out there, or even that she's out there to, to make a buck. They're wanting to get this story out because it's like, look, this has all happened. Here it is, when we have all this evidence and stuff, and you get people that just try their best to discredit them, and they pretty much took it as, you can take it or leave it. This is what, this is what happened. This is what we remember. Call us a kook if you want, but it doesn't matter.
Well, they tried to keep it hidden for so long. They didn't even want people knowing.
Well, because, we were watching UFO, what was it called? The
UFO Hunter?
The UFO incident. The UFO incident. 1975, it was about this case starring, I'm not sure who the lady was, but the gentleman that played Barney was James Earl Jones. And
I remember that. I remember when that came out.
Yeah, and it's really. I remember watching it when I was a little kid, because it came out in 1975, and I remember watching it back because it was a TV movie.
Born in 75?
No, but I bet
11 years before I was born.
Yeah, but it was on. It was still playing on TV.
Yeah,
because it's a TV movie and it was syndicated to some degree, and it was an interesting. We were watching it, and when I was talking to her earlier, and I was telling her we were watching, she said, there's some. It doesn't have everything right, but which movie does?
They never do.
But it was interesting to see, because he, from what I've read of this, he was an extremely emotional person going in through this, and it portrayed that as best it could, as only James Earl Jones could do, him screaming. He was scared, and he has reason to be scared. So I believe her. I believe the story.
I do too. There's a lot of them that I just kind of roll my eyes at, like the ones that show up in World Weekly News or Weekly World News or whatever it is.
And the reason that map is, and it's there, and I think if I remember reading somewhere correctly, and I wish I could find it, and it might even be in the book, there was 2 stars that they could not account for, but when they got a stronger, telescope, they found those 2 stars that were on the map that she drew. and about the same exact point. So
that's pretty awesome.
It is. And, and this is a woman that, she wasn't trained in astronomy. She wasn't trained,
Yeah.
How could she do that? I couldn't do it.
All right, Nikki, who we got next week?
Next week we have Bill Nell. He's a popular speaker, author, and consultant with eclectic interest, best known for his paranormal research and seminars. Now, he's been a consultant on such movies as Independence Day, Men in Black, The Fifth Element, one of my favorite movies, The Fifth Element.
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. He's been on Man Cow, Howard Stern, Bob and Tom, CNN, NBC Nightly News. He's been all over the place, and he'll be here.
Great.
This is the tip of his, of his career.
His entire life has led up to this point.
Woo! And after this, he will retire.
All right, with that huge bonus that we're going to pay him next week.
Yeah.
Whoa. You got money?
Well, you're holding out.
I didn't say what it was, boys.
Oh, are we sending him a pie?
We're baking him a cake.
We want pie, too. In fact, maybe some more pie before the money. So, all right, well.
You guys, sometimes I worry about you. Okay.
All right, everybody, that wraps us up for this week. Be sure to tune in next week for Bill Nell. Till next week, guys, leave you with this. Don't be afraid, only believe.